You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today, we'll hear how women are represented in film images around the world, from Stacy Smith's newest and sometimes surprising research. Then, Michelle Ebanks, president of Essence Communications, talks about their new survey on choices of and trends in the lives of African American women. And last, we celebrate with the winner of the 2014 Women's Media Center Award for Social Media, announced only at the awards last Wednesday in New York City, Elianne Ramos. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. The headlines have all been about Ebola, Ebola, Ebola. And there is, in fact, crowd panic. But in fairness to the crowd, there has not been the kind of leadership we need on this. The CDC changed its line a couple of times, NIH changed its line, and politicians are going in 6 different directions. Nor has the president been as firm and consistent as we would need him to be. And then I began to connect that with the thought that women actually in a crunch are better decision makers. Based on a recent piece that ran in the New York Times, you can Google it and get more details. It ran on October 17th, and it's by Therese Houston, Huston, and its title is simply, Are Women Better Decision Makers? They phrased it as a rhetorical question because the answer in the article is yes. Neuroscientists have uncovered evidence suggesting that when pressure is really on, women bring unique strengths to decision-making. The scientists are women themselves. Mara Mather, cognitive neuroscientist at University of Southern Cal, and Nicole Lighthall, a cognitive neuroscientist now at Duke, are 2 of a number of researchers who found that under normal circumstances, when everything's low-key and manageable, men and women make decisions about risk in somewhat similar ways. They gather the best information they can, they weigh potential costs against potential gains, and then decide how to act. But add stress to the situation. In the lab, you can replicate that by having participants submerge their hands in painfully cold 35-degree water. And guess what? Men and women begin to part ways. There were a number of experiments that they did on this, and I won't go into them now for lack of time, but again, you can find the article simply called, Are Women Better Decision Makers? In the New York Times online, October 17th. The levels of the stress hormone cortisol appear to be a major factor, according to one neurobiologist in the Netherlands. He and his colleagues have found that the tendency to take more risks when under pressure is stronger in men who experience a larger spike in cortisol. But in women, he found that a slight increase in cortisol seemed actually, ironically, to improve decision-making performance. In one interesting study, this was a team led by Livia Tomova and Klaus Lahm at the University of Vienna, they found through 3 different experiments that under stressful conditions, women become more attuned to others, which helps them with decision-making. When women became stressed in their experiments, for example, having to give a public speech, they found it easier than usual to empathize and take the other person's perspective. And just the opposite happened for the stressed men. They, unfortunately, became more egocentric. So what happens to women often is that women are asked to lead, unfortunately, only during periods of intense stress. It's called the glass cliff, a phenomenon first observed by the University of Exeter professors Michelle Ryan and Alex Haslam, in which highly qualified women are asked to lead organizations only in times of crisis. I like to think of this as it's going down anyway. Why not appoint a woman captain of the Titanic? Then, if she saves the ship, well, it wasn't that bad to begin with. And if the ship goes down, well, these women, they really can't handle authority. It also made me think of oysters. Now, that may seem a leap of ratiocination to you, but I read somewhere a while ago that oysters, or at least certain breeds of oysters, are male when the waters are calm and still, and when storms roil the oyster beds, they turn female. All of which makes me think that what we really need in the Ebola crisis is not so much a Surgeon General, although if we had one like the woman Surgeon General that we used to have, that would be good, but maybe a Nurse General, somebody who has hands-on experience with the disease, who will be consistent, who will be matronly, maternal, firm, and consistent, and be able to be a better decision maker in a crisis when the oyster bed is roiled by bad weather. And now it's time for our first guest. Dr. Stacy Smith is a frequent guest on this program. She is the director of the University of Southern California Annenberg Department on Media, Diversity, and Social Change. She has worked with the Sundance Institute, Women in Film, and her cutting-edge research has received lots of attention from mainstream media, including the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, the Huffington Post, Newsweek, and lots more. Since 2005, she's been working with a team of undergrad and grad students to assess portrayals of males and females in popular media, and some of her research has been featured in the Women's Media Center annual Status of Women in Media report. We're glad to welcome her back, this time to report on some new and fascinating research. Stacy, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Robin. It's great to be back.
Well, you do such wonderful research, and you've done some new research now on gender images in global films.
Indeed.
Tell us.
Well, a few years ago, we started conversations about what's going on around the world in terms of on-screen portrayals of girls and women, and behind the camera are women working as directors, writers, producers.
Right.
And in conversation with the Gina Davis Institute for Gender and Media, Rockefeller, and UN Women, we all collaborated and decided it was time to look at how gender is being represented on screen and behind the camera across the top 11 territories worldwide.
Wow. And what did you find? Tell me some good news for a change.
Well, Rob and I always, I think, bring the temperature down a bit when I have to deliver my findings. But I think we saw some really interesting trends, some good news and some bad news. First off, if we just think about who's on screen, a couple of countries did pretty well. The overall portrayal of girls and women on screen came in at about 30.9%, or exactly 30.9%, which is under a third. It's about 2.24 males to every one female.
Wow.
It's not a good sign. Very few films were gender balanced or featured girls and women in roughly half of all roles. Only 10% of the sample, and only 23% of the sample had a female lead or co-lead. So that's the overall global picture across 11 territories. Yeah. However, we had some signs of a few territories doing a little better. UK, for example, 38% of all characters on screen were girls and women. Brazil, 37% of all characters on screen were girls and women. And also in Korea, 36%. Matter of fact, Korea, half of all of the films in their sample featured a female lead or co-lead.
Huh.
So there are some places that are pushing through and showing women on screen and girls more than other territories. The two territories that were probably the most problematic just with on screen were India. Only 24.9% of the roles went to girls and women, and films that were collaborations between the UK and US studios, only 24% were girls and women. And so we've really articulated when money moves in, females are pushed out because the studio films have the lowest percentage of girls and women on screen. Wow. So those are our prevalence findings.
Wow. It was also from work that you did that I discovered what is the nose on my face. I can't believe I hadn't thought of it before. That one of the reasons women have fewer roles. I mean, there's many reasons, including we don't get the women directors, etc. But one reason is that films do well internationally when they have a lot of violence and bang bang and stuff like that, and don't do well when they have a lot of dialogue, and they're more expensive because then you have to dub them or you have to run titles. And of course, films with women in prominent roles tend to talk more than shoot 'em up. And I found that fascinating.
Well, yeah, we're seeing a trend towards more girls with guns, right? Whether it's Hunger Games or Divergent or Lucy, we're seeing that trend, and we're actually seeing it make money around the world, right? What I thought was really interesting here is one country that I think a lot of U.S. content creators are focusing on is China. It's projected to be the largest market by 2020, and what's really, really fascinating is that 35% of all roles on screen are girls and women in China. 40% of the leads were female, leads or co-leads in the Chinese films we evaluated, and 30% had a balanced cast. And then when we turn to behind the camera, 17% of the directors were women of the Chinese films. And so I think there's a real important emphasis here. If the U.S. is looking to China as a place that it wants to distribute content, Chinese films might be very different than U.S. films, and we need more research. We need a larger and more representative sample to really get a sense of what's going on in China, because this may be the tipping point for U.S. content creators to be thinking about populating storytelling in what those audiences actually want, which is one of the reasons why we did this study.
Of course. I mean, it's only 1/4 of the world's population, merely that. Tell me, you mentioned that 17% of the directors were women in China. What does the directorial fallout look like around the world?
Well, it's really interesting. UK independent films did really well. 27% of all directors were women behind the camera. But really problematically, Robin, 5 territories didn't feature one female director: France, Japan, Korea, Russia, and then, of course, the U.S. So we're still seeing a real glass ceiling for women being able to populate that really important leadership role across some of the most popular films worldwide from 2010 to 2013.
Fascinating. And what does it mean, Stacy, when there's no women directors really showing up in Korea, but didn't you say, 35% of the women personified in films, of the people personified, were women? Does it mean, Korea does not seem to have a particularly soaring rate of male consciousness. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's really interesting in terms of what can make money at the box office, and it seems to be suggesting that female-driven content does do well, at least in the films that we evaluated. Now, one thing we did across the entire sample that we've done multiple times with our U.S. content is look at, if you have a female director or a female writer, does it change what we see on screen? Are there more girls and women on screen? And sure enough, all those films, if a female writer was attached or a female director was attached, there was a significantly higher proportion of girls and women on screen. And so to your question, I think that that's one way of thinking about how are people being attached to films in that specific leadership position, and how can the floodgates open for women to get in those roles to have a stronger sensibility of what we're seeing on screen. And as I just mentioned, only 7% of all directors across the sample are women, and less than 20% of the writers. So there's a lot of work to be done globally of getting women into those key decision-making roles.
Is there any way to shame the United States because it's in lower categories?
Well, I think that, I don't want to add insult to injury here, but prevalence is only one indicator, as we all know, and really looking at the nature or the context or the way in which characters are shown on screen is probably more important, and that's where I think the story turns problematic very quickly.
Yeah.
And because your listeners are uniquely interested in women in powerful leadership positions, I would be remiss to not highlight a few things that we found. Across 5,799 speaking characters, only 11 women were shown in the corporate suite or as CEOs, COOs, CFOs.
Oh, my God.
Only 12 were high-level politicians, and if we look at the apex of political leadership, only 3 women held top positions politically worldwide. There were 42 lawyers and judges, only 3 were women. There were 81 doctors, less than 15% of those roles were filled with women, and there were 17 professors, only 1 was a female. So we're really seeing women shut out of these key leadership positions, and that's where we really need to put an emphasis. It's not just in prevalence, but it's the nature or way in which characters are shown, and it's very easy to populate these with women.
Oh my God, that's worse. Those figures are worse than reality. I mean,
many of them are. Yes, many of them are.
You'd think that art would reflect life at least. God forbid it should be ahead of life and hold up some standards, but it doesn't even reflect reality.
Exactly. And these are easy decisions to make. I mean, particularly if you're not thinking about the protagonist of the storyline, secondary and tertiary characters are very, very easy to think about who to cast in, and it's being more thoughtful in those decisions and who can play those parts, and does it have to be, as it typically is, white men?
Yeah.
There are other ways of telling stories that don't require anything other than a simple casting decision.
Absolutely. Oh, as usual, you are so smart and so full of facts. It always stuns me. I can't quite say you've made my day with happiness, but I'd always rather know the truth, because then we know what we're dealing with. Thank you so much, Stacy, for the research and work you do, and for coming and telling us about it on Women's Media Center Live. You have to come back again every single time you come up with these goodies or even these baddies.
Every time, Robin, you're our first stop. Thanks so much for having me.
It's time to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with Michelle Ebanks, who heads Essence Communications, which affects African American women more than any other source in the world. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Our next guest, Michelle Ebanks, is the president of Essence Communications Incorporated. She leads the #1 media and communications brand dedicated to African American women. The entertainment company's portfolio includes Essence Magazine, which is the world's leading title for African American women, with a readership of more than 8 million, and Essence.com, the award-winning daily online destination for African American women, and the Essence Music Festival, the nation's largest annual African American cultural and entertainment event. Here is Michelle Ebanks. Michelle, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You do so much. You're not only the president of Essence Communications, but you're also president of People en Español. So you are one busy woman, and I'm grateful you're giving us this time. Essence recently, in collaboration with Nielsen, did a major African American custom study on habits and attitudes in the Black community. And I and our listeners are particularly interested in the findings of Black women. some of which were very, very interesting. So tell us about that.
Yes, we were very excited to collaborate with Nielsen, and together we surveyed more than 10,000 people online and in person.
Wow!
And we were thrilled to discover, what matters most to the audience. And there were several themes that emerged, and one very important one is an affinity for positive cultural images. There's just a strong desire for those images, and we understand, from previous studies, one, images of Black women in society, that there's an overwhelming view that the dominant images of African Americans in media and in society are negative or extreme, and the audience, just strongly wants to see images that reflect the evolving reality of African American women. I mean, the audience has tremendous socioeconomic success over the past 4 decades, and we're just not seeing that story told.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very, and I have a high paranoid quotient, a high PQ instead of IQ, and I somehow think that that's not coincidental. But in any event, we've got to change it. Go on.
Absolutely. And another recurring theme was how the audience valued seeing more African American faces in ads and celebrity endorsements. They want more diversity, more images, a broad array of images in ads. And the study also revealed that Hispanics and non-Hispanic Caucasians also want to see more diversity.
That's very encouraging. We always say when when they show women in only in traditional roles and not in roles that we actually inhabit these days, we always say you have to see it to be it. This is a case where the women are already being it but not seeing it reflected.
Absolutely. And, here at Essence, I've just been inspired by the work that you're doing, because it's profoundly true that those images have such an influence on what we believe for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we push for, what are those real images?
Yes.
And, the third theme that I'll mention is the importance of cultural heritage and identity. Culture plays, a huge role for the African American consumer segment, men and women, and wanting to see, that culture reflected is important. We're not seeing enough of that as well.
And it would enrich everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah. Talk a little about young African American women, because I've been so interested that online the most feminist blogs, the most strong, regular, really on target, using the word feminist, in the entire blogosphere and on Twitter, even separate from Black Twitter, the most feminist. Best feminist voices is the only way to put it, are young African American women, and that's a real change.
It's Robin, it's a real change, and it's an exciting one. What we know from our insights is that young African American women are more confident than ever. Toni Morrison, in an interview, our just great shero, was asked what she thought was different about African American women today than when she wrote The Bluest Eye decades ago. And she laughed and said, confidence. They are so confident.
That's priceless.
We see that. We see that across the board.
Priceless. And the focus on health and wellness that you found also, that 79%, something like that, of African American women agree that pursuing good health and a good lifestyle of nutrition and exercise and so forth is important. That's probably higher than any other ethnic group, that focus.
It is. this is a segment where women have always worked outside the home.
Right, exactly.
This isn't something that's transitioned in the last 4 or 5 decades. Always been responsible for the financial security of the family. And with all of these different responsibilities, African American women have often put themselves last.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She is learning, in the words of Michelle Obama, I am learning to put myself first.
Yay.
Or very close second to her children, she said.
Yeah.
So the audience is getting much smarter and is more interested in, how they can be healthy. Because it is only if, they are healthy and strong can they do everything that's necessary in order to achieve the success on their terms.
Mm. And another finding that fascinated me, because I am I have the kind of brain that when I hear the word fiscal, my brain shuts down and says cannot compute, cannot handle. Is that more 48% of African American women are more interested in investing their money now than they were 5 years ago. So I'm very awestruck and admiring of that. How did that come about? That's a very interesting sort of biomarker for feeling I want to have a stake in this society, isn't it?
It is. Marriage rates are going down for women overall, as you know.
Right, I do.
But they are, significantly lower for African American women.
Mm-hmm.
African American women, the pressure on this African American community is, if it's happening in the general market, it's happening by some factor in this community. So
sure.
The marriage rate, she's twice as likely to be single head of household. Right. And when you're single head of household, then you have to prioritize your economic security.
Absolutely.
And so the importance of investing their money now is only increasing. In many cases because she has to rely on herself. But even if she's married, she is also a key contributor to the financial status in the family.
That's right.
So the importance of investing and understanding how to invest their money now is paramount.
Well, it's very impressive to me. It sounds like such a grown-up thing to do that I have never done. So,
it's the confidence as well. The more confident you are,
that's right.
Then you embrace what traditionally hasn't been embraced by women.
That's right. Yeah. Take a moment, because we're coming close to running out of time. Take a moment and talk just briefly about your additional post as president of People in Espanol. You manage the strategic development of one of the nation's top-selling Hispanic magazines that reaches 7.3 million readers each month.
Yes. Thank you. Happy to. People in Espanol, it's in its 18th year, it's just such a significant and important brand featuring the Hispanic female, where when we look at the population growth over the next 20 years in this country, it's coming predominantly from the Hispanic community. And women, Hispanic women, as are African American women, are both twice as optimistic as women overall. Their role in the household, in the economy, is tremendously important. So there are many parallels with multicultural women. It's Hispanic and African American women, and so I'm thrilled to be a part of both communities and to find ways that we can work together. There are multiple stories to be told about women, and I'm thrilled to play a role.
Well, you play a very large role, and I'm grateful that you do. Thanks for the work that you do. And thank you also very much, Michelle, for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you so much, Robin, for all you do.
And now for some news you can use. Well, you can use this news, that is, if you or someone you know works in the tech industry or one of its auxiliary multiple branches. Here are some figures about the major tech giants and the percentage of male employees. Apple, with 98,000 employees, percentage male 70%. Facebook, 69%. Google, 70%. Twitter, 70%. Yahoo, 62%. That's a lot of boys. Well, Google has been in the news recently for announcing that they're tired of its being a man's world, and that although 7 out of 10 people who work at Google are in fact guys, they want that to change, so they're undertaking a long-term effort to improve the numbers, the centerpiece of which is a series of workshops aiming at making Google's culture more accepting of diversity. But here's the problem. The company shows no evidence that the workshops or any of its other efforts to so-called improve diversity are, actually doing something. It has set a high goal to fight deep-set cultural biases and the sort of frat house attitude there. But nonetheless, it isn't working, or so it would appear. Google says its plan isn't one shot. They say they've been trying to improve diversity for years by sponsoring programs to increase the number of women, and they still say minorities, but the majority of people of color on the planet, minorities and women who go into tech, and studying the way that they hire people in an effort to reduce bias. And after Google took this stand, then immediately, monkey see, monkey do, Facebook, Apple, and Yahoo and other tech giants issued similarly miserable numbers about their workforces and similar vows to change this. Google, however, is alone in diversity training workshops that address something that is called unconscious bias, hidden reflexive preferences that shape people's worldviews, but that people can disown when they say, why, I'm no racist, but, or I'm not a sexist, although. They cite statistics that show that improving diversity isn't just feel good, but diverse teams can be more creative than homogeneous ones. They do all the right things and seem to hit the right bases, except that they don't connect the dots. The dots in this case would be what I addressed in a previous commentary a week or so ago, which is that Google, with all of this concern, thinks it's doing women a favor by offering its female employees a $20,000 bonus to have their eggs frozen so that they are free to devote their childbearing years obsessively to Google in a male model of the workplace. That this is intrusive and objectionable, they don't seem to see. A case of unconscious bias, boys. They don't seem to see that offering family-friendly programs, offering support to women of childbearing age and child-rearing age, and for that matter, fathers in the new fatherhood, would be a better approach than asking women, or even making it easier for women, worse, to do things to their bodies that are dangerous, unhealthy, harmful, may not be in their own best interests or their own best wishes, and can be harmful to the offspring. We don't know yet. There's a case of unconscious bias for you, so if you know somebody or are somebody working in the tech world, be careful. Be very careful. Be warned indeed. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with the winner of the 2014 Women's Media Center Social Media Award. It's a surprise that couldn't be announced until the actual gala, so she joins us today.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. This time speaking with Elianne Ramos, the winner of the 2014 Women's Media Center Award for Social Media, the one award that is voted on by you, People's Choice, by folks going on to womensmediacenter.com and voting for their favorite online social media activist. And Elianne won, not surprisingly, because she is so active on behalf of Latinas and, in fact, the entire Latino community that I don't even have time to go into it all here, although fortunately we'll talk about some of that during our conversation. Here is the winner, Elianne Ramos. Welcome to the program, Elianne.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Robin. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, felicitaciones, hermana. Congratulations on being the Social Media Award winner for the 2014 Women's Media Center Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I can tell you I'm still shaking. You know, it's such a beautiful surprise, this whole award, and more than anything, to be in the same room with you, with Gloria Steinem, women whom I have admired from afar for so long. It's an overt honor. You have no idea how big of an honor this is.
Well, we're honored to be in the same room with you too. You know, I mean, the work you do is fabulous.
Thank you.
It's not surprising that this People's Choice Award, the only award that is actually voted on the Women's Media Center website by the people, went to you this year. So many things to talk about in your work. You're known online as at ER, for your initials, ER, Geek Goddess. I love it. And you're so many different things. You're the principal and CEO of Speak Hispanic Communications. You're the founder of the Border Kids Relief Project. I hope you can talk something about those two. But also, you have done such work with Latinas. In August, when it was Women's Equality Day, you did a whole campaign about, are you registered to vote? Your followers on Twitter talk about how inspiring your work is to them, how you keep them going, how you're the source for so many survival resources for Latinas online. And you've also done things at the higher level of powers. You're the social and cross-cultural communications advisor for the Faces of Diversity initiative in Medellin, Colombia. That's a heavy place. And you're on the advisory board for the Political Institute for Women. So I don't know where to start with you. You start and tell us about some of these amazing activities.
Well, what can I tell you? I have kind of a split personality in terms of the work that I do, you know, to make a living, and the work that I do online. But in reality, they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. For my company, I partner with nonprofit organizations who want to reach out to Latinos. Mm-hmm. And so all of the campaigns that I work on in my personal business have to do with helping the community anyway. Now online, what I've been doing for the past 6 years is to kind of bring a more inclusive platform for Latinos online, you know, to build awareness about issues that our community may not be aware that are mm-hmm. happening, or that they may not be talking about. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think there's a big need in our community, and it's changing. But there's a big need for people to realize that, you know, what happens in Washington, D.C. is something that affects their everyday life. And,
right.
You know, and so what I try to do is to include the people online who are the bridge to the community who is not online. Uh-huh. And also to bring in the people who are empowered, you know, to bring them into the conversation so they can listen to their constituents. And mm-hmm. that's kind of like my the most important thing that I think that I do, or that I try to do in my work.
So you're a bridge, basically, a really very effective bridge and a translator, not only of language but of content.
Yes.
From power
I try.
from power to powerlessness and vice versa. That's extremely valuable. Your blog, listeners, her blog is at ergeekgoddess.com. I love it. And you have your own channel on YouTube.
I do, and it's been such an amazing journey because my first platform was Twitter before, but I started doing video and bringing in, all of these the stakeholders in different conversations into a half an hour forum, and it's been so amazing to see, the participation of people, and I love the video as a platform because you have a bigger opportunity to actually say what you mean. You can't it can't be misinterpreted as it could be in other platforms.
Right, exactly. Elianne, tell us a little bit about the Border Kids Relief Project, because I, like a lot of feminists, our hearts just were devastated by watching those little kids, be screamed at as they came across the border. It was just nightmarish, and the nightmare continues. So tell us a bit about that, because you're the founder of that project.
Yeah, well, what happened is when the whole situation kind of exploded in the media and online, this is not a new situation. This has been happening for years, and perhaps to a lesser extent.
Right.
So, but in this occasion, when it first started exploding in the media, it was hard. Like you said, it's hard to watch something like that and be so hard-hearted that you're not going to help if you can. What happens at that moment is that myself and a group of people who were concerned, I had conversations with so many people, and I don't know, about other people, but I cannot just sit down and cross my arms. I have to get involved. So we decided to come together. I started reaching out to my network, obviously, and so a group of organizations, like the Dolores Huerta Foundation, who Dolores has been such an amazing mentor for me, but also LULAC, the League of Latin American United Citizens, and Kids in Need of Defense, so many different organizations with whom I have relationships. I have built relationships over the years. We decided to come together and do something about it. And also, I started reaching out to my network of bloggers and social media friends that I have. And so together we have started doing local fundraising events, and fundraising, and also raising items, collecting items that are critical, that the kids need. And providing those items, getting those collections to organizations that are providing relief for the children. So it's been an amazing work. It's we're still in the middle of it. We're still working.
Sure.
I'm actually working on launching a whole Christmas, the holiday campaign for the children. So there's more work to be done, but it's been very remunerating to at least you feel that you're doing something about it, and you're helping these kids go through at least a less
trauma.
Sorry.
Yeah. Because
less traumatic situation.
Because they, they're little people, they're little kids, and to face such hatred. It just sears the soul, absolutely. What good work you've done there.
I feel that regardless of the politics, regardless of how you feel about one party or the other, these are children and these are human beings.
Yes.
And so the least that we can do is to try to lessen their pain.
Exactly. And that brings me, in fact, your mention of politics brings me to what I was going to raise next. You hear both of the major political parties talking about the Latino vote, the Hispanic vote, and how it's, of course, increasing in its power and clout in this country, and what can they do to woo it, and what can they do to get Latinos on their side. And they also talk about the women's vote. But it seems to me, tell me if I'm wrong, that they haven't yet connected the two and talked about the Latina vote and the Latina constituency. Which I am looking for in all the coverage, and I don't find yet. And yet I damn well know it's there. So talk a little bit about the growing power of that.
Well, Latinas really are the ones that are leading in the communities. You see, in every segment.
Yay! Hooray! Hooray! Hola!
We're the ones who are, starting up businesses. We're the ones who are going into college and getting a higher education in larger numbers. We're the ones who are active in social media and getting the voices out there in the blogging world. And so, Latinas are also the decision makers in the household. They hold the budget to the house. And they are also the drivers in the elections. And I don't think politicians understand that part. It's a demographic that is largely ignored, and they tend to patronize the community in general, but most of all the Latina women, ignoring the fact that we're the drivers in the elections too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, that's what I suspected, and I'm very glad to hear it. But they better wake up to the reality of that power.
Yes, exactly. I think what happens also with the Latinos is that we're only seen in terms of, immigration.
Yes, that's right.
So it's almost like immigration is the only issue that we care about, and when in reality it's not. If you see the polls, education ranks very high up there.
Right.
Who is the person in charge of the education of the children? It's usually the woman.
Right.
Not to be stereotypical, but the women are the ones that head the household. And
absolutely.
So the economics, the education, all of these other issues, healthcare. All of these issues are very important in the election, and this is mostly the decisions of women.
Right. Well, it makes perfect sense to me, but of course politicians are not known for sense. That is not necessarily a common attribute that they have. Oh, to my sadness, we have to go, but we will not lose you. You must come back many times on Women's Media Center Live. We can follow her listeners on Twitter and at ERGeekGoddess, and her blog is at her website, ergeekgoddess.com. You are just wonderful. Mucho gracias for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Time for one last pause here at You know what you're listening to, Women's Media Center Live. And you know who you're listening to. It's Robin Morgan. We'll be back in just a moment with Fighting Words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. And I trust you're ready for some fighting words. Tuesday is election day for the midterms. And I want to put some fire in your belly, as they say, because certainly our opponents have a greater hunger than at this point it seems we do. Midterms are always boring to many people who love presidential elections. So it's our job to get out the vote of people who normally would shrug and say, well, it doesn't make a difference, or it's only the midterms. It makes a difference. According to a new study just out from the Reflective Democracy Campaign, out of 42,000 elected offices in our country, 71% are held by men. 90% of those positions are held by whites, and 65% of that 42,000 are white men. White men make up just 31% of the U.S. population. Women, meanwhile, make up 51% of the population. This organization compared data from elected officials in the summer of 2014 to recent census data and came up with these figures. Now, perhaps it's time to go back to the power of fighting for the vote, which in a sense we're doing all over again. Here are some words from Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the Great. In a powerful speech she gave in 1868 at the Women's Suffrage Convention in Washington, D.C., 20 years after she had basically launched the women's rights movement at Seneca Falls. She said, among other things, "To keep a foothold in society, women must be as near like man as possible, reflect his ideas, opinions, virtues, motives, prejudices, and vices. She must respect his statutes, though they strip her of every inalienable right, and conflict with that higher law of her soul. She must look at everything from its dollar and cent point of view, or she's a mere romancer. She must accept things as they are and make the best of them. To mourn over the miseries of others, the poverty of the poor, their hardship in jails, prisons, asylums, the horrors of war, cruelty, brutality in every form, all this would be mere sentimentalizing. To protest against the intrigue, bribery, and corruption of public life, to desire that her sons might follow some business that did not involve lying, cheating, and a hard, grinding selfishness would be arrant nonsense. In this way, man has been molding woman to his ideas by direct and positive influence, while she, if not a negation, has used indirect means to control him, and in most cases developed the very characteristics both in him and herself that needed repression. And now man himself stands appalled at the results of his own excesses, and mourns in bitterness that falsehood, selfishness, and violence are the law of life. We ask women's enfranchisement as the first step toward the recognition of that essential element in government that can only secure the health, strength, and prosperity of the nation. Whatever is done to lift woman to her true and fair position will help to usher in a new day of peace and perfection for the nation." She goes on to say, "In speaking of the masculine element, I do not wish to be understood to say that all men are hard, selfish, and brutal," etc., the caveat. But think about that. That kind of sentiment, not sentimentality, but sentiment, in a suffrage speech. She saw the vote, as did her colleagues, as a profound gesture of the human spirit. Now, when Election Day looms, bring somebody with you to the polls, somebody who might have had trouble getting there, somebody elderly, somebody disabled, somebody just lackadaisical. Drag them, give them coffee, buy them a drink. Make it fun. Make it meaningful. And I'll leave you with repetition. According to a new study just out of 42,000 elected offices in our country, 71% are held by men. Staggeringly, 90% of those positions are held by whites, and 65% of that 42,000 are white men, who, in turn, make up just 31% of the U.S. population, while women make up 51% of the population. Get out there and exercise your right to suffrage, your right to the ballot, your right to vote. And that's it for today. My most translated book, The Anatomy of Freedom, Feminism in 4 Dimensions, comes out soon from Open Road Media as an e-book, and it's available now for pre-order at Amazon and other online booksellers. One shouldn't choose among one's offspring, but I must confess that Anatomy of Freedom is a favorite of mine. And join us next week when we'll be welcoming guests to talk about organizing domestic workers and about the new fatherhood and about circumventing countries that forbid abortion rights via, imagine, email. Remember to visit us at WMCLive.com for the archive of all our previous episodes, and be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor, and our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and do join us next week, right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.